So I finally have a little workspace set up in my basement, and I recently picked up these boxes of analog reel-to-reel audio tapes at a flea market for $5 a box. I think it's about time to do a data archaeology video, but focusing on an analog medium, audio tapes. So we have all these audio tapes from about 1968 or so of just various audio recordings. I think these were from a radio studio. At least that's what the seller told me. So we have that listing for that one. And this one has a much shorter one, so that's interesting. Still in the late 1960s though. But this one actually comes with a piece of paper. Oh, okay. It was most likely glued to the top up here. We'll deal with case number 2 later, because this is going to be a lot of audio. I would hate to skip over this stuff. I want to convert all of it. So, let's see. Tape 1, even labeled. Nice. Lafayette Radio Electronics. Oh. I've never seen these little 3M clips before. They look new, actually. Or maybe they're just really clean. I don't know. But they're a really good idea. I like that. That's pretty cool. I wish I had some of those for my 16mm film. So now that we have the medium out, we need a way to play it. And the tape seems to be perfectly fine. Like, it should play pretty well. But who knows? Here is my... let's see... my Sony TC105. Just in case you're interested in what kind of equipment I'm using. I picked it up for $5 back in July of 2011. That's pretty good. Looks like I got some solder on it too. Whoops. Here's a nice feature. Most of these old audio recorders tend to have a little door in the back and a little compartment. Tons of little stuff like, here's some earbuds from the 1960s. Terrible audio quality. Inside of here was a little old microphone that I actually use for other stuff sometimes. So it actually found applications outside of reel-to-reel audio recording. It's always interesting what goodies you'll find inside there. Let's test it out with the tape that was in here. Oh, this is an old audio recording of Thunder that I made. Let's change speeds. Yeah, sounds about right. We'll have to also get the speed right for these ones, because there's 3 speeds for these. I'll just go ahead and take that off. It's kind of neat because whenever you engage the play button, or play lever, arms come up and press against the tape. So whenever it's stopped, there actually is nothing holding the tape in, so you can just like push it in and put it out. Like, we'll get this. Like that. And then... no, that's full. Ah, yes, we're lucky. Take a reel. A Westminster? Weird. Wouldn't think to see that. Anyway, so... pull that through. And... hook this all up inside.
St. James Parish.
Oh, it's going to be a really long play.
7, 6, 5, 4.
Oh, a countdown. Don't know what that is. So, I'm going to go back a little bit. Now we know it's on the lowest setting. Plus, I can always change it later on. But now comes the actual recording part. So I have my Zoom H1 microphone, which it does work as a nice microphone, but the feature that I really like is it being a portable audio recorder. So you just take a headphone jack to headphone jack, so we have line in, and then we have this one. Might need this little adapter. there's a bunch of connectors somewhere. Ah, over here. Okay, so then we have monitor external. Auxiliary and microphone monitor. Okay, so we have the Zoom microphone connected to the monitor. Let's see if it. Okay, so we have that. It's maxing out. Change the level down. Okay, so it looks like the voltage is actually kind of high on that. Whoever's talking on that is talking a bit loud, maybe? Oh, okay, there we go. Going to up the audio output on this so I can hear it easier. I'll be monitoring this. There we go. So, record and play.
Talk given to the Decatur Deanery of the Diocesan Council of Catholic Women.
Oh, we missed a little bit there. I wonder what that was about. Okay, let's try again.
Talk given to the Decatur Deanery of the Diocesan Council of Catholic Women. 10 March 1968, St. James Parish. We will count down 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 10 March 1968, St. James Parish, Decatur, Illinois. Decatur Deanery, Diocesan Council of Catholic Women. The Church and Christian Dignity.
Are and has been and will be the backbone of the church. I don't ask that you agree with me in every instance, and I have typed my remarks so that I know what I have said and so that I understand what I am saying. Don't get carried away on some tangent. The title of the talk is The Church and Human Dignity. Today is like no other day in the history of men. It is a time of trial, error, confusion, bewilderment, discussion, talk, concern, and excitement. It is also a time of serious difficulty. Our society faces for the first time massive resistance to government policy in the conduct of foreign affairs. Witness the fully moral resistance to the draft. Our society also faces for the first time the possibility of open, widespread rebellion and warfare on a serious scale within every large population center in our country, within every center of communication and transportation within this country, within the breadbasket of America's industrial complex. These are indeed serious times, and they are times for serious thought, prayer, and also action. Because 70% of our people today live on 1% of our land, it is reasonably assumed that some of your family will live within one of the large population centers affected by the above-mentioned conditions. And so you are involved, and if you are not, you or your children will be. Many of you are from communities that are far removed from the central problems of the large cities, primarily because your communities to this day do not allow minority peoples to live within their confines were they to seek such an abode. By long-standing tradition, most small communities do not allow minority peoples to stay overnight. You are preparing your children, therefore, not to accept life in the big cities by such attitudes as these, which are totally un-Christian and un-American. Many of the majority race who migrate to the large cities today, as many of them do, are just as ill-prepared in every way for this tragic journey as are those who are from the minority groups seeking a promise of some form of better life and dignity who arrive from the rural southern areas of our country. The problem which we face today is the color problem. Is not the color problem, nor the race problem. It is simple racism of a most vile and immoral kind, and primarily it is a white problem. Until we, the majority race, stop grouping people together in lumps, it will not be solved. Until we accept a person for what he is, we are not truly Christian. Until we realize in our conversations, and most importantly in our attitudes, our day-to-day dealings with others, that there are good and bad people, and color, nationality, or creed really does not determine these factors in the individual standing before us, we have not done our duty to Jesus Christ. My penny catechism told me that man was created in the image and likeness of God. I accepted this as a fact, and I've tried to live by it with varying degrees of success and failure, but I have been conscious of it. I haven't tried to ignore it, and I don't see any question or qualification about whether that man is acceptable to me or not. I don't like everyone I meet, either. Take, for example, I think some of our state legislators, particularly those Republicans who come from the suburban areas around Chicago, are every bit as criminal in their own way as is the mafia member. They are both guilty of injustice. The mafia member makes no bones about stealing and corruption in all its forms. The state legislator who neglects justice, as many of them did this third time around in this last session. Only the species of sin distinguishes them, and they represent, they say, the people who elected them. The sin of theft is wrong, extortion is wrong, and the sin of racism is wrong. It matters not who or how many are involved. Racism is a serious sin. The term black power may mean any number of things, and I am not even going to try to define it. I can say with certainty, though, that if we, you and I, were the Christians we ought to be, and the Americans that we say we are, and paid more than lip service to the number of documents that embody the beliefs that we say we follow, there would be no black power. It would be without existence, without cause, without purpose, without goals. It would never have come to be. Many wonder today what the church is doing involved in all the issues we see it in, particularly when white attitudinal problems are involved and emotions run high. We see a generous supply of name-calling. Priests, nuns, and even on occasion bishops have been in demonstrations, and this will, if anything, tend to increase. Everyone accepts the role of the church in personal sanctity and then fails to realize that social responsibility is but an outgrowth of realization and Christian foundation, that Christ is our brother, period. Prayer is but a motivation to Christian action. Christianity is revolutionary. St. Paul tells us continually to put off the old man and put on the new. There must be a transformation, a new way of living connected with baptism. This goes on in the individual and then into the marketplace. Society must be transformed. Excuse me. And this transformation must, in our day, come soon. There is no time to waste. Too often as we as followers of Christ have been nothing more than tinkling brass and sounding cymbal, beating the wind and doing nothing. What a mockery today to utter that historical phrase. See these Christians, how they love one another when people are throwing bricks at nuns, cardinals are being hissed, and priests are being booed, and a host of other similar activities are undertaken by so-called Christians. We will see the institutional church move into the courts to obtain justice in, for example, housing. More of this will come, and we expect it. We will also see various individuals within the church, priests and sisters and bishops included, going out on their own ahead of the church into the heat of controversy. Witness Father Graffi. He is not alone and merely representative of many priests in the church. Candidly, he is somewhat mild right at the moment. The movements toward revolution in South America are brought about by the slowness of governments in power to meet the real needs of the people. Some priests have joined this movement, and it is certain that others will, because every other avenue of action has been exhausted to obtain justice. This message is not missed by North American priests. I would not say that they represent even a significant minority, but the thought is there nonetheless. Revolution is not new to Christianity. We can go back in history and find many examples of it. When governments no longer represent the people, they either condone or foster injustice. They are not long for this world. God never ordained our form of government as divine. I believe personally that it is the best we have on the face of this earth. But I also realize a very definite Christian urgency for change. I cannot condone injustice to overcome injustice. Crime in the streets is the wrong way to redress crime in our legislature, particularly in view of the fact that our state legislators have failed for 3 sessions in a row to address themselves to the problem of fair, just, and open housing for everyone. It is condoned injustice of a most vile kind. Congress is currently playing games. You must realize this was written almost a month ago now. Congress is currently playing games with fair housing, and this matter is urgent. People, no matter their color, are not fooled by this tommy rot. We speak of liberty and justice for all, and our legislature in this state and in the United States Congress is messing around with whether we will do this or not. This is a sham, and it is a fear. It is telling the man that in the ghetto that he is inferior. He is not to be treated justly, and that, in addition, he is going to be policed by a larger and larger police force just to make sure that he accepts this injustice. He is 22 million people. The largest minority, the great American melting pot, as we familiarly and lovingly call our country, has been asked to consume or to ingest. The challenge is great. The risks are great. The cause is just. The need is urgent. We see our state legislatures, as we did this last session, sneering, and the U.S. Congress messing around. These things are controversial, to be sure, but they deserve our attention. I want you to realize that our nation is in serious trouble. Philosophically, this is known as materialistic secularism. You and I are too enmeshed in the creature comforts to show Christ-like concern for our neighbor who undergoes inhuman, intolerable injustice. We resent the unpleasant fact that this is even brought up. Frequently when I give these talks, I am told locally, we have no problem here because the people don't want to face the problem that exists there. Yet we condone injustice, and the time to put on the new man has never been more urgent than it is today. Our attitudes must change. We must see beyond our bank account, in which, by the way, there is no salvation. It is on the basis of how we treat our fellow man that much of our salvation will be determined. The first charge that we receive in the rite of baptism is the church officially addressing us in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. And I quote that charge to you now for reflection and for serious consideration. If then you wish to enter into life, keep the commandments. You shall love the Lord your God with your whole heart, and with your whole soul, and with your whole mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Who is your neighbor? Think of the parable of the Good Samaritan. We must put on that new man and transform our thinking, our attitudes, and our actions towards our neighbor. Nothing short of a revolution within ourselves will be satisfactory. We must stop living with material possession and acquisition as our sole goals in life. Secularism is that most insidious outlook which tends to divorce our convictions, which we profess in church on Sunday, and then fail to live the rest of the week. We are living and acting very often in the matter of our attitudes toward minority, like Christ was valid only on Sunday. We are, in short, living a sham, and we must face up to this fact and change. The church alone cannot accomplish justice. It requires the cooperation of all men of goodwill in government and in business. The problems of prejudice and discrimination will never be attacked properly and positively as long as the businessman continues to plead that his schedule is too busy, while he continues to expend hundreds of hours on non-controversial civic endeavors, which, while important, point out to the minority person in the most revealing way that the power establishment is afraid to face up to the difficult tasks which this community must face up to and solve if the community is to be saved. The government of this country, particularly in its legislative branch, both in this state of Illinois and in the United States Congress, had better realize that additional police power is not the solution to the problems of the minority. It will settle for justice and nothing else. Payoffs in make-work, jobs, subsidies to unwed mothers, the summer job, the dole, all of these are quite inadequate and inhuman, and ultimately fool no one and dissatisfy everyone, the giver and the receiver. Justice, equal opportunity to education, employment, and housing on individual merit are the only possible course to follow. The cry of the minority is, stop giving me things. Let me earn them. Let the fruits of my labor count the same as everyone else. Stop treating me like a child, for I am a man who is willing. It is at times, admittedly, a very uncertain sound of men who are uncertain that they are, after the centuries of deprivation, men. It is a faltering effort, and it needs help, not obstruction, not a paternal, superior, supremacist attitude, but a brotherly concern and cooperation on a day-to-day level, on a person-to-person basis, on a Christian daily living basis. You call yourselves Christians, this is your challenge. The pace of desegregation and the eventual integration of minority people into the great American way of life, the mainstream of society, is basically in its speed up to the white man. He can delay it, but he cannot halt it. The minority people are making rapid strides, and the ideal of social justice has finally arrived. Those who fight justice know now that they are on a sinking ship, floundering in their self-adulation of superiority. The exploitation of the minority is at an end, and now is the time to realize this. Those in the church, in government, in business, who fail to see the truth of this idea fail at their own peril. How many times have I been told to be patient? I have been patient, and I am still trying to be patient. But patience is no excuse for the toleration of endless duplicity, of judging one person by one standard and another person by another standard, based not on individual merit, but on some sort of stupidity called pigmentation. Less than 50 years ago, I know you'll get a bang out of this. Less than 50 years ago, a marriage between someone in St. Patrick's, the Irish parish here in Decatur, and St. James, the German parish, was called a mixed marriage. The reason for this was a silly nationalism, which now, thank God, is no longer valid. Our church and our country overcame this challenge. It is now time to overcome another, the one which separates black and white. I can't tell which side your ancestors may have taken in the warfare that took place between St. James and St. Patrick's a century ago, but I will look forward to seeing which side you take in the current struggle that is going on today. In the 6 years that I have become an ever greater activist in the struggle for human dignity in various official and unofficial capacities, the slurs, the threats, the inanity, the gross stupidity, the letters, the phone calls in the middle of the night, the threats, the language and all, has been something of a cross to carry. Only twice have I allowed myself to react publicly to these remarks. Once when a Catholic church rented space to a speaker to speak on something called the hoax of civil rights, did I publicly challenge this act, the speaker, the audience, and the moral tenor of all three. And here in Decatur, when someone brought up the label of communist and did perhaps try to attach my name to it, did I allow myself any form of reaction? I did then, and do now resent any and all associations with communism. The struggle for human dignity is the most moral and Christian activity possible in the society in which we live today, if that society is to survive. Many have labeled Father Grappi one thing or another, but few have tried to decently and really understand what he is doing and why he is doing it. They simply disagree. I cannot help but ask, where are the other Christians who are willing to realize on the practical day-to-day level that Christ came so that we could all have life and have it more abundantly? He, Christ, didn't say that this was the exclusive domain of the white man either. We had better wake up if we are trying to follow him. We had better try to live our religion and stop trying at all costs to live as though our pocketbook were our only God. In all societies in history, a vast difference between the affluent and the poor has brought about the downfall of that society. I would love to see this statement challenged by a significant fact to the contrary. We in America today are facing this same situation. Frustration of peoples who find that the government in power does not represent them, and even more serious, fails to hear them or to alleviate their grievances, leads to rioting. The longer this condition prevails, the more radical and the more demagogic the leaders who they have among them become. In other words, the seeds of anarchy can come to fruition. Anyone familiar with the situation knows that there is duplicity in the United States at all levels of government today. But this is not heaven, and a certain amount of this in any human institution is indeed not only tolerable, but expected. But taken as an example, the housing situation, where all sorts of duplicity does exist, and I speak from a great deal of personal experience, and see what our government is doing to alleviate that situation. This was before Congress moved to where it is today. Do we accept the thesis of a certain Southern former governor and simply beef up the police force? Is that the solution to our complex problem? Do we take pride in the fact that our legislators, both nationally and on a state level here in Illinois, have shown an alarming reluctance to even deal with this situation? Do we understand in any manner whatever the living conditions of those who are subjected to discrimination? Would we, if we were subjected to this duplicity, simply live with it because it has been part of our situation for hundreds of years? We have seen 15,000 of our youth die to defend something called the American way of life. What is the American way of life? Is it really worth defending? And what is more, will it survive? I personally, if allowed, would say that it either must change radically or it will not survive. I am for law and order, absolutely. But law and order must represent all of the people. You honestly expect people to respect laws which do not hear them and have no respect for them. Within the next 5 years, our country must meet these challenges or perish as we know it today, in my opinion. This seems strong, but words themselves will not convey the seriousness of my conviction. I do not believe that riots are inevitable, and I will not predict that every city in this country is going to erupt. No citizen of whatever hue wishes this. No sensible man wishes this, and no moral man can possibly condone it. Time is of essence, and unless we use the time properly, I am convinced, unfortunately, that what I have said will come to be. Laws effective and enforced to ensure equality of opportunity based on individual merit for all in education, employment, and especially in housing must have the immediate support of everyone seriously interested in the survival of his country and his church. Massive programs must be initiated by the public and private sectors of this country if it is to be saved. We are spending over 15 times the money to defend the American way of life in Vietnam than we are spending here to correct its weaknesses and to save it. This is an extremely unworthy activity if we are to call ourselves rational men. There is a primacy of need which stands out very clearly to anyone willing to address themselves to this problem. Again, how often have I heard they are pushing too fast? I would rather say more truthfully that we are moving too slowly. If we do have difficulties this summer, which I hope and pray that we will not, the work which I have been very actively engaged in during these last 6 years actively will become more difficult. But I renew my pledge to you right here and now as a Catholic priest to try to attain peace, to work for justice, to get people together and not into separate camps. The hill may become a bit more steep, but eventually we can attain our goal. I ask for those willing to help to live Christ in your daily lives, to act like a follower of Christ in your attitudes towards others, especially to see your own prejudices for what they are, and to see above all the extreme urgency of the message which I have presented here to you today, and to carry this home with you. And I thank you very much, and I'll entertain any question you have. Anyone have any questions?
The record of oppression due to racial prejudice is shamefully long. Indeed, it stems from the time in which the minority, the Negro individual, was granted emancipation from slavery and was given no means, no humanly or rationally understood means of advancing from a very poor state. Education systematically has been denied to the Negro through the economic necessity of everyone in the family working when work was available, subjugation, and a very overriding sense of paternalism, particularly in the southern areas of our country, has given rise to inferiority in education, which, while we may not like it, is nonetheless a true and sound conclusion. We have seen the white man ignore the problems of the very people he brought over here. The Negro never was desirous of coming to this country. He was brought forcibly. Eventually, the conscience of the nation was stirred. We had the Civil War. We did our duty, we thought. Actually, we did about 20% of our duty. We never tried to make up for past errors sufficiently. And now we are faced with a very crucial moment of truth nationally as we attempt to redress this error which has gone undone since 1865. Many Negroes are forced by economic and social necessity to segregate themselves, just as were the early immigrants in this country. The early immigrants meant a great deal of difficulty and scorn and contempt in their efforts to improve their status. So too will this be true of the Negro. But we must realize that the Negro's badge of identification is far stronger than was the badge of identification affecting second and third generation children of immigrants. The Negro is faced today with challenges in housing, which he cannot meet because he does not have the economic ability. He must pay a tax to buy a home in a Negro neighborhood because usually there is a very high density in relation to others. He pays a tax to buy a house which very often has outlived its useful span of life. Having paid more for the house initially anyhow, he is expected by critical white neighbors who do not understand his plight or condition to maintain this house as though the house were 20 years old, whereas in reality very often it is 50 years old. The average immigrant from the South coming to the North does not understand property ownership. This concept in itself is new, and we had better not, in our desire to see all turn out well, expect that the Negro is immediately going to understand all that's involved in the maintenance of property. Here is another challenge which is facing the Negro in employment. We can hardly blame the employer who does not want to turn an individual with a rather poorly shaped second grade level indication loose on a $60,000 machine. And yet very often this is the only qualification of the man coming from the South who knows nothing but the barest of necessities and picking cotton. And there's no longer cotton to pick, and he indeed has a problem when he comes north and faces an industrial and technological society. The frustration here at being turned down rather systematically, the expectation of being turned down all too often discourages the individual from even seeking employment after a time. How much of this can human nature take? How often can you be rejected before eventually you no longer offer yourself for rejection? The poor soul who comes from the South to the North and has nothing to offer and is refused when he makes this offer to a technological society is often bewildered, frustrated, discouraged, and very often angry, as we might expect him to be. In education, what kind of improvement can take place in a culturally deprived family? That is, when the child learns proper syntax and grammar in school and goes home to hear a very, very inferior form of language spoken, when the child learns arithmetic, which goes beyond the counting on the fingers by parents who cannot read or write, when the child, in short, receives a good deal of reasonable education and then goes home only to have this work undone, what can we expect? We have children in our schools in the Midwest here today who have a private room by the time they're in the 6th grade. They have a desk, they have a lamp. Their mother or father will tell them they can't have the radio or television on until they finish their studies. This is far different from the young individual who goes to a home which in 1930 housed 5 people, a mother and father and 3 children. Today, the same house may house, any place from 7 to 30 people. and the noise level tends to go up in proportion to the number of people occupying the home, particularly if these people are, in the main, younger people. Consequently, we can see that any educational effort is going to be sadly frustrated by the environment of the home, both by the fact that the parents cannot give what they do not have, and secondly, by the physical situation in which the student finds himself. He is graded objectively on exams and tests which have no consideration really given to his status and condition as a member of ghetto society. Consequently, he is relegated to the slow learner category, and any native ability this individual may have, anything that might come from personal attention, from someone making the interest, taking the interest and making the effort to pay personal attention to the student, is pretty well curtailed. The student becomes aware of his condition in one form or another. Eventually he becomes frustrated and ends up mad. When we look at the discrimination that occurs in the political arena, we see the old and time-honored, shop-worn practice of a politician desirous first, last, and always of self-perpetuation in office at all costs. His only concern is, will this get me elected next time? This is true perhaps of 90% of all legislative activity. There is no relation to whether this is what society needs or society does not need this, but rather, what will this do to the voters back home? Consequently, any realistic effort that is made to deal with the problems with which we are faced today, being emotionally loaded and filled with a lot of misinformation, most of the voters are not apt to accept any forward-looking program that does any more than make a simple statement, and even this is going to be difficult for the politician. The challenge is intensified and perpetuated by the high visibility of the darker skin of our minority brother, the Negro. Regardless of his personal qualifications, he is seldom, if ever, acceptable without reservations in the dominant white society. He is not free to live where he chooses in accordance with his economic status and ability. He is often thwarted in his employment and his educational aspirations. He is politically restricted. Very often his restrictions are not even delineated to him. He is simply ignored. He is religiously frustrated because he feels God has turned on him. He is socially ostracized because he falls into the slow learner category in school. He falls into the socially and culturally unaccepted individual in our public functions and so on. And individually then he is demoralized. So consistent has this pattern of discrimination against him been that today in the United States, as a nation, there is a great deal of hypocrisy in the glaring discrepancies between our principles and our practice. Prejudice, segregation, and discrimination defile everything they touch, but their effect in housing, employment, education, religion, and associations is especially deplorable. The evidences in housing are strikingly acute. No one can deny that the tax base of many of our major population centers is being eroded very, very severely by the decrease in the productivity of the property, which is overloaded with people who are migrating from the South. As long as these people continue to migrate from the South, incidentally, we are going to have a great degree and a high degree of poverty, a great degree of unrest, personal unrest, which eventually infects the social strata, and we have social unrest. So this is going to continue. Some of our cities then have less and less tax base with which to meet more and more acute problems of social unrest, of personal disquietude, and so the cities, every one of them, every large city, is in serious trouble. The containment policy that has been followed in our society so far, in which suburban areas are virtually devoid of Negro homes, is at best immoral, and at worst, nothing bad enough can be said about it. The segregated housing inevitably leads to overcrowded housing. This in turn gives rise to slum conditions and the consequent problems of physical, social, and spiritual deterioration, with the ever-increasing necessity for more social workers, more teachers, special protection for the school properties, more police officers, more juvenile detention work, more drug addiction work, and so on. The costs are astronomical, and the white owner who lives in the suburb has never stopped to figure that it's his taxes that are taking care of this. He is simply interested in, I don't want one of them living next to me. Talk about short-sightedness. The poor soul can probably not see beyond the end of his nose. If he could, and if he had no religious motivation at all, which he very often claims he does on Sunday, but if without any religious motivation, he should still be the first one at the door trying to knock discrimination down and destroy that house of cards. At the root of all of this lies an ugliness of personal prejudice against darker-skinned people, constantly generating feverish suspicions, hatred, distrust, and unwillingness to behave as a neighbor, an unwillingness even to talk to people who are not of one's own race, a certain preconception or prejudgment, which we call prejudice, the most costly economic and far and away the most costly moral mistake that we have made in this country. This is the thing that we must get at, prejudice, the prejudging of peoples. This is the most crucial item. Legislation in itself cannot directly destroy prejudice. Its influence is important in the combating of discrimination, that is, prejudice in practice. Good legislation can become a potent educational force, giving support to the timid, who are very often good but somewhat apathetic people, and prodding the conscience of the indifferent, the average individual who doesn't want to become involved. Legislatures and legislators, government and government officials are obliged to conscientiously strive for laws at preventing and eliminating racial discrimination in housing, employment, and education. The votes of citizens who are aware of these problems should approve and accept these laws and with firm resolve abide by them. Closely aligned to this problem is inequality of economic opportunity. Much remains to be done and to be accomplished in the area of hiring, in the area of job training. Insufficient is the concern given to the flagrant discrepancies evident in upgrading and promotion practices. Very often a few of the minority are hired. This is called tokenism, but we might call it salad dressing. It's putting the lettuce around the jello. There is no promotion, no upgrading. The consensus of some of these more backward managerial types is that we have hired a Negro. Now, what do you expect us to do? Promote him? Granted that race should be no criterion for promotion, neither should it be a barrier to advancement. Promotion on the basis of individual talent and achievement is an honorable and just claim which deserves unbiased recognition by all. I think very often the Negro feels this when it is not perhaps true, and very often it is true and nothing seemingly can be done about it because it appears so just due to the processes followed. Discrimination in professions, crafts, and trades discourages the acquisition of proficiency and skill. If you're not going any place, you're not too concerned with what condition your car is in. If there's going to be no advancement for you in your profession or craft or trade, then why bother to improve? Why bother to assume responsibilities which can just as well be left undone? No one gives his best where his talents are not appreciated, because the Negro has been hindered in his preparations for occupations requiring special skills. Justice calls for special efforts in behalf of his training. This is part of our idea in the job training program. But indeed, much more needs to be done by the private sector than is being done, although there is a trend, hopefully, which will develop a movement. Restricting the Negro to unskilled tasks not only checks his progress, but works to the very detriment of the nation's labor force itself. Proper motivation and equal opportunity can provide Negro youth with the solid confidence which will strengthen his faith in himself, brighten his outlook for the future, and most importantly will keep him in school where today he does not stay because he sees no use and no particular bright spot in his future by staying in school. Equal opportunity for employment can prevent despair, help overcome racism, and curb a spirit of rebellion which is evident in the youth, especially in the minority youth of America today. In furthering the best interests of Negro youth and the future of America, racial segregation in schools can no longer be tolerated. Indeed, we could ask the question, who has tolerated it? Far too many have tolerated far too much for far too long, independent of any color consideration whatsoever. It is, to say the least, hypocrisy to try to teach democracy in segregated schools. Segregated schools exist because there is segregation in housing, and there has been segregation in housing, and we see no really rewarding promise in this area until a vast majority of the white people in the United States are re-educated and learn to think, minus a great deal of emotional slop that has resided within their minds for a long while. How cruel to teach democracy in a segregated school. It certainly is self-defeating. Segregated schools exist, as I mentioned, because of segregation in housing. Eliminate the one and the other will soon vanish. It is irony to educate for democracy with all its implied rights and freedoms and responsibilities in deliberately segregated institutions of learning. How cruel to open classroom doors and reveal opportunities for a better way of life, to awaken desires for nobler goals, and then to close the gate of constraint on neighborhoods where real culture and virtue are hardly possible, and where dreams turn into living nightmares. The child in an overcrowded home who wants to remain moral is going to be, in a deed, pressed to live up to his personal convictions, and very often he will be mocked by his elders for his false sense of virtue. This is what we face. It's very, very difficult coming out of an overcrowded home, no matter what your race, and having something worthwhile to offer either to society or ultimately to yourself as an adult. The Catholic parochial schools should be outstanding examples of the unity and equality, the solidarity of the human race under the fatherhood of God, which Christian doctrine so clearly and evidently demands. Our hospitals have made praiseworthy strides in the integration of patients and personnel. I think this is one of the first areas where this occurred on any notable basis other than the United States Army. There should be a constant alert to eliminate any vestiges of discrimination. In hospitals, for example, physicians, nurses, and hospital personnel are offered numerous opportunities for the practice of the corporal works of mercy. Any bias in this performance of these works would tend to retard recovery and aid the physical and mental discomfort of the patient. And what we're trying to do is get people out of the hospitals. Organizations bearing the name Catholic or associated with Catholic causes ought to have qualifications for membership which are identical in every respect for any sincere applicant. We've had a great deal of trouble with this in the past. There were a great number of religious communities in the church which would not take applicants of other than the white race. This is one of the things where we have made a mistake and where we're doing only what our Lord asks us, to try to correct our ignorance, to try to right our wrongs within ourselves. The lay organizations, I'm not going to mention any ones in particular, but one more noteworthy example exists and comes to mind so frequently and so pressingly. Catholic laymen getting all upset over the membership of other Catholic laymen who don't meet their false and completely and totally unchristian attitudes in regards to race. This has been another area which is almost criminal. Then also, everything else being equal, our Negro brothers should be extended invitations and welcomes into our associations in ways that show more finely our delight in having them. Past negligences can be atoned for by heartwarming examples of Christian brotherly love. Charity, says St. Peter, covers a multitude of sins. And I think that if you reflect over these few remarks that I have made here to you today as college students, just thinking from really off the top of my head or the cup of my shirt, as it were, if you think over these things, you'll see why people are angry. The Negro now sees that there are laws on the books in employment and education. These laws are not being implemented rapidly enough. He sees this as discrimination. Very often we can more properly identify it as a certain amount of governmental bureaucracy, which doesn't justify it, but it at least explains it to some degree. But we can't have this. We are in a spirit of change. We are in a transitional period from subjugation to equality. It is only natural that as we make a tremendous move of this nature, which should have been made, no one denies, over a period of 100 years, and which we're now asked to make in 5 years, and that's the challenge of it. But as we make this transition, there's going to be friction, there's going to be misunderstanding, there's going to be some resentment on the part of the minority. Things are not going fast enough. On the part of the majority, that things are going too rapidly. A certain amount of this might be true, but by and large, we've got to ignore it and keep pressing forward as fast as reality will allow. There's no question that we can have the finest social teachings connected with the gospel, but unless these things are implemented and brought to reality, we fall right back into what I mentioned in the previous talk, which you heard earlier. We fall right back into that category of clanging cymbal beating the wind. We as individuals, as Christians, must get out and start working for open and free avenues of opportunity for each and every individual, based completely and solely on the merit of the individual, not on whether he's a Catholic or whether he's German or whether he's Jewish or what, but rather on the basis of what we know he deserves as an individual on his own merit. I want to comment very briefly on the work of police forces in coming months as we continue this period of social transition and the unrest that accompanies it. Unrest is only natural. Our police forces are indeed overtaxed to a great degree. Many of the police officers have had no formal training in what we would judiciously refer to, I guess, as community relations. And they don't have any idea of group dynamics or mob psychology. The police forces in most of our cities are so understaffed that to have in-service training in itself is something of a sacrifice to the overall police effort on a day-to-day basis. But the more overriding principle here is one of economics again. Cities seem unwilling and reluctant to afford the expense necessary to properly train their police officers. Also, the pay scale in the police force is such that the people that go to work as police officers unfortunately very often lack the qualifications that the rest of society would wish them to have. If they had these qualifications, they probably would not sacrifice themselves for the salary that police officers so frequently receive. The police officer is the symbol of authority for the community, and that authority has ignored, has turned away from, and has shown contempt for the minority peoples. And the police officer now bears the brunt of this, and he's not equipped to bear the brunt of this. He gets demoralized and discouraged. So we can see that this is going to be quite a problem this summer again. We see that the police officer frequently overreacts with the use of force where very often persuasion would do the job. Simply his appearance would do a great deal more than if he goes with billy clubs and so on to attack people. Sometimes police officers, being human, don't really realize their capacity by virtue of the uniform to persuade people. I'd also like to say that if you lived under all of the conditions, the sum total of conditions that I have just mentioned here in this second talk, if your family, your aunts and uncles, your grandmother, grandfather, father and mother were subjected to all of the inhuman indignities simply because either you were quite unable to live in the community where time and circumstances have thrust you, or simply on a more unjust basis yet, simply because you fit in that category or in that stack, it can be asked in a very sincere and honest way, what would you do? I don't know what I'd do, but I think, knowing what little I know about myself, that I would probably have gone far further, far faster towards anarchy than most of these good people have. I think that deserves our sincere consideration. They have put up with so much, so long, and it is so irritating to me to hear people say, well, they are pushing too fast. There's a total lack of appreciation for the depth of human degradation that occurs in the family situation and in the family structure. There's a total lack of any feeling at all for the human man. And these things I appeal as the causes for urgency to you here today to take back to your college campuses, to think about very sincerely, to bring up in class, to discuss with your neighbor. Each and every one of us in all of our social day-to-day contacts can help change others, can help hurry along this most urgent necessity, the eradication of ignorant, superstitious, stupid, useless, morally depraved, economically unwise, and illegitimate prejudice. We have to learn to accept people for what they are. Christ did this, and we can do no less. Thank you very much for all of your attention here, and I'm glad to have had the opportunity to talk with you and have you hear the first talk that I gave. The question you ask is a very good one. You asked me, what did I think was the basis of prejudice? I think we might go back. I really happy to have an opportunity to answer that. I think we might go back to Selma, Alabama, where much of the current movement really took its start. The people in Selma are no different in their outlooks, really, than any number of other communities, somewhat larger and somewhat smaller. The majority of the people did absolutely nothing, and this is perhaps the greatest crime of all. To decide to do nothing is to make a decision, although the decision is frequently mentioned as, well, I don't want to become involved. You are involved, and you have made your decision not to involve yourself, which means that you do nothing. Now, if we look at the situation in Selma, we find that very typically the most uninformed segments of the community and those in the public area of life, particularly in government, who exploited the common sensibilities of the great majority of the people, particularly, though, those who feel threatened by any equality because they are on the low rung in the white society ladder. These people were very vociferous in the use of terms that were derogatory of the minority people, the Negro. And they were very vociferous in spreading suspicion. We can look at the rank-and-file Ku Klux Klan member in Alabama today and find cultural and educational and depravity, not to mention immorality, not amorality, but immorality, that is unequaled in any other segment of our society. These people were the ones who made the noise and who formed the public policy. And the crime and the sin here is that the good people who know better, who are educationally formed, who do know what the concept of justice is, did nothing. They accepted the policies enunciated by people who were the least qualified within the community to enunciate much of anything. And this, of course, then caused the confrontation to occur. Injustice was present, and injustice was perhaps redressed by what occurred in Selma. It's only after we see this confrontation that we see the people who could have avoided it actually taking a part in trying to heal the wounds. And I know I witnessed this same process to my sorrow and somewhat to my frustration within Little Rock, Arkansas. I remember particularly one man whom I knew well who said, nobody is going to come in and be served in any one of the 15 drugstores I own. Well, I watched him change his opinions in the matter of several months. It's a kind of a cash register morality. But this man knew better. He knew that he was doing wrong, and yet he did nothing about it. He accepted what the Ku Klux Klan and people of that sorrowful, sorry ilk foisted off on him, that verbal garbage. And I think we're guilty of that in very many instances today in society. The good people simply aren't doing enough. If they did, we wouldn't have the problems. The bad people, the people that don't have the ability to see the problem, that don't want to see the problem, and actually just those that can't see the problem are very often the ones that are most vociferous, most active in formulating public policy. And this is our crime. This is the basis of prejudice, to accept as fact something that has no solid foundation, simply on virtue of common acceptance, without being willing to step out and correct it. That's what I'm asking of you here, because you're good students.
I didn't think it was going to be 45 minutes for that, so let's flip it over. Actually, not flip it over, we have the button to see. and we can see if there's anything on the other side. It says side 1 or 2, Decatur Deanery Council. Yeah, side 1 and 2. So that would be both sides. Weird. What, No, that's reversed. Okay, well, I'm just going to use this and rewind a bit to see if maybe it's just a long amount of time of blank tape before that. Weird. Looks like that's it. I mean, it says side 1 and 2, and that should change it over. A little bit of dirt, but not much. This has 2 audio tracks on it, and this was able to play it fine. So, that's strange. Let's just take this out.
Cardinals are being hissed, and priests are being booed, and a host of other similar activities.
Interesting. Well, I think that's pretty much it. Looks like it's only one-sided after all. Put this back. Oh yeah, the little clip thingamabob. So cool. So the first one is done. So guys, that's pretty much it. This was actually really nice to be able to do this. I enjoy anything reel-to-reel. I figure that since we have 20 tapes, we'll have 20 videos, or about that. Some videos will most likely be 45 minutes long, but if they are fully double-sided, then they'll be like an hour and a half long tape, or video. Data Archaeology episode. And I'm kind of excited because it'll be a very easy video to make for me. Now that I have everything set up, I can just set it to go, sit back, and listen to it, make sure it records right. So please let me know your opinions on this episode about, do you like that I'm doing analog recovery also? Do you like that I'm showing things like this? Because I think these tapes might have some cultural significance. I don't know. They're a snapshot of a time from what, like 58 years ago or something like that. It's something most likely not too many recordings of compared to now. So I think it's always nice to have to save more recordings. And also, I have a question. Do you guys like to see this running the entire time? Like, for instance, I decided to save battery life and not record the entire time so it goes to black. But I think it would be pretty easy for me to do. Just, I'll hook a webcam to the roof, or actually the floor of the house, the roof of the basement, and so then I can record directly to my computer. And so then I can record the real time of the reels turning while the audio is being recorded. So do you guys like that it just goes to black, or would you like me to include the video of the reels turning? Because I think that could be kind of cool, but it would also make the upload sizes bigger, and it would waste you guys' bandwidth a little bit more. So there's so many different questions about that. So what's your guys' opinions of this episode? And would you like to see more? And what would you like changed? Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you very much for watching. See ya!